Okay, part two. We're back where things go wrong.
That was perfect.
We got the giggles.
We should have some sort of like sound effect right there.
Oh my gosh, I should figure out how to do
That
that.
would be so funny.
Lightning strike in our video. Oh my God. Okay. Welcome to No Couch Required. Two therapists, too many feelings, not enough chill.
This is basically the podcast version of your most validating group chat. If it were run by two therapists with zero bullshit, big hearts, and a knack for turning emotional chaos into conversation.
We're unpacking healing, mental health, and all the messiness in between with humor, honesty, and maybe even a little ethically sourced tea from the therapy room. No couch
Or copay
required.
Hi, I'm Kayla Judd, a licensed marriage and family therapist. I specialize in complex trauma and PTSD, and I primarily work with couples navigating relationship conflict and the lasting impacts of childhood trauma using emotionally focused therapy and somatic EMDR.
And I'm Ashley Wright, a licensed clinical social worker. I also specialize in complex trauma and PTSD, and I work with individuals healing from childhood, relational, and sexual trauma to help them reconnect with themselves in a grounded, embodied way.
Before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. Even though we're therapists, this podcast isn't therapy and it's not a replacement for professional mental health care. Listening doesn't create a therapist-client relationship.
If you're struggling, we encourage you to reach out to a licensed mental health professional in your area. And if you're in crisis in the U.S., you can dial or text 988 for immediate support.
Okay, let's get into today's episode.
Okay, we're back. Last week we talked about TikTok and AI.
I'm glad you're saying last
Social
week because
media.
it's the same day for us.
10 minutes later. We took a chit-chat break to get giggly, and now we're back.
I feel like that's what's happened.
For our listeners, it is last week that we talked about TikTok, social media, AI, some of the benefits, also kind of why it's so compelling, right? Like why we're so drawn to that. But today we have a lot to say about our concerns about those things, the dangers, where they can be really problematic
Yeah.
for mental health specifically.
Yeah. I'm sure I feel like these episodes, they really do blend together. I think we'll still probably end up talking about, some of maybe these concerns and these negative consequences, and also the context of why the thing that is so compelling pulls us into that. But
yeah. I think it's really hard not to have crossover between these two episodes. Like last week, we really struggled to
probably the same
not dip into
concept.
this episode's stuff. That's okay. We want to start off by saying any consumption of social media, any use of AI should be done mindfully and intentionally, right?
Yeah.
Specifically with social media, no one is required to have any kind of credential or license or expertise in what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyone can have a platform, and many people who do have platforms don't really have the credentialing to back them up, but they maybe have charisma and influence and money and whatever. They have a platform.
Knows how to use the algorithm to their advantage.
Yeah, right. They might be really good at marketing. They might have both. There are definitely people who do both, but just keep in mind who you're listening to and what their background is, and do they really have the legs to stand on with what they're saying.
I mean, I think what comes to mind in particular is that, especially if we're talking about trauma,
Yes.
I want to also say relationships too.
Yeah, like anything. I would say this isn't even mental health related, but I would say dietetics and exercise and nutrition. I think we are passionate about trauma and mental health, but I think this is just true of everything.
I guess where I went was I was thinking about the difference between like a life coach and a therapist.
Oh gosh. Oh no. You've done it now,
and I have had several clients who have gone to a life coach, or I don't want to throw any of this stuff under the bus, but like Reiki, I think that's how you say it.
I don't know that.
Or like energy work.
Reiki. Yeah.
Like I've had some clients go to people like that, and they open up this trauma and they don't know how to put it back together.
Yes.
And so that's what comes to mind, is that even if you've got somebody who might have a lot of knowledge, that doesn't necessarily mean they know how to intervene. And that's
Yeah.
what therapy is.
Mhm.
When we write our little notes,
Mhm.
we have to write in there how we intervened, what kind of interventions we actually used, and not just, I'm sitting here and teaching you information.
Yeah. I think that touches into one thing. One reason I'm really particular and passionate about people being trauma informed, which like can mean a lot of things, but my definition of trauma informed anyway is really understanding like, hey, if you push right here and there's a big reaction, you have to know what to do with that big
Mhm.
reaction, right? You have
Yeah.
to know how to like put people back together before they leave your office.
Sew them up.
Regardless of if you're a trauma therapist or not, I think everyone should have some amount of education on like
Yeah.
what to do, or at least to know when to send people off
Somebody.
to someone who does know what to do, right? Knows how to stay in their lane. So I will say, I think to be fair, I think there's a place for coaches. I think there's a
Mhm.
place for Reiki and energy work and the more alternative
Absolutely.
healing modalities.
I mean, I'm very crunchy.
Yeah, right. I think I'm scrunchy. I think that's what my sister
Scrunchy.
told me.
Yeah. I'm scrunchy.
But it's really not about the modality being used, but it's about the person that you're
Mhm.
seeing. It's about the practitioner and if they really know what they're doing with the
Yep.
modality that they're using. I've heard, right, like even therapists, I've heard people have really bad experiences with therapists with EMDR. They're a
Mhm.
therapist, they're
Yeah.
licensed, but they might not really know the
How
tool that they have in their hands and how to use it
Yeah.
in a way that's helpful and not
Yeah.
hurtful or harmful to their
Yeah.
client.
So in the context of like social media and AI and all that stuff, like with people, are they qualified? Do they have, those credentials backing them up? I know it's not everything. I
Yeah.
know it's not because I don't like the idea that we like professionals went out and learned, right? They got the knowledge, they got the information.
Yeah.
Anybody can do that. And so it's not to say that people who don't have credentials aren't saying good things or right things. You just have to be really careful about that. And I think in our last episode, we said, hey, even for us, question us at times
Yeah.
when it just doesn't resonate, when it doesn't feel right.
Mhm.
You just have to be smart about what you're intaking and who you're intaking it from. And again, considering who's saying it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not to say credit anyone who doesn't have licenses or credentials and take everything that a licensed
Yeah.
person says 100%. It's not black and white like that. It's just pay attention. It's just be mindful of what you're taking in. And, and again, with either category of people, don't take everything as absolute 100% truth, right? Either way. But I do think that there is a space in social media where a lot of people just step in and are like, well, this was my personal experience.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to be a coach and now I'm going to start this coaching program and I'm going to say all this stuff and I'm going to put all this stuff out on social media and people will just eat that up
Yeah.
because we're looking for understanding, we're looking for meaning, we're looking for help, which is not a bad thing. It's just really easy to take advantage of.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind whose content you're taking in
Yeah. Oh,
and how much you take
I'm
it
just
in.
thinking of something somebody told me just the other day where their partner was going to seek out this program for certain things. And they told me how much it was going to cost. I'm like, and then like what was provided in it. And I was like, you're saying they're not even going to get weekly therapy and they're going to pay like this huge chunk of money? I don't know about that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, which is sort of this self-help
Yeah.
um,
World.
aspect and world of
Yeah.
what is offered and
Mhm.
how it can be very exploitative. Is
Yes.
that a word?
That's the right word. You did
Great.
it. Yeah. Yeah. So I think to kind of come back to the point we were getting to, because we're going to talk about self-help.
Mhm.
We're
In
going
a
to talk about it.
minute.
We're going to get there. Is that even if the person that you're following has really good experience, they're really grounded, they have credentials or a license or whatever, you really like their work, whatever they're putting out, like we talked about last week, it comes out in small bits, which can be helpful for
Yeah.
digesting that. But because it can only come out in small bits, it doesn't have context. It doesn't have context for a bigger picture and it doesn't have context for you specifically.
Individually,
And
person.
that's, I think, where a lot of things can go sideways as you start to take in these things as like, oh, well, this is true, this is me, but you haven't contextualized it into your life and your experiences and your trauma and your relationships. And so if you don't have that contextualization, then sometimes that creates like really harmful, like negative beliefs, or maybe it really isn't helping you the way that you want it to be helping you.
Yeah. One of the ways that I feel like this is really prevalent is this idea of like people being toxic. I never trust that word anymore when people say that to me. So we watch something on social media and it tells us red flags and behaviors. And all of a sudden we label this person as toxic, or what happens a lot is a narcissist, right? And sometimes I'm like, actually, you might be the one struggling with that, not that person. And that's part of this context is how does it fit in your life, and how are we creating the nuance and understanding what's actually going on? And so people will take that information, they'll start labeling people, and we'll start like a lot of relationships are like ending because we're taking in this information and labeling certain behaviors. Like I feel like we're moving into an era where we are taking in so much of this information and then expecting like a level of perfection from people.
Yeah.
Because we hear this one thing of like, this is a red flag. Okay, I can't be friends with anybody who does this thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, where's the humanity in relationships? Where's the flexibility and the patience in relationships?
Yeah. And the context for, is that like one random struggle behavior that your partner or this person in your life has, that like that's one part of them and the rest of them is actually really great? And you know what I mean? Like you're reducing somebody to one maybe negative characteristic or trait. If that is true that they do that, right? You're reducing that down to like one piece of them. Which isn't really fair. The other thing that just kind of lit up in my brain when you were saying that is we talked a little bit last time about the like the dopamine, right? Of like seeing the information and getting that dopamine hit. It made me, and I don't think I said this when we were recording the other episode, but it made me remember how social media runs on emotion, right? The algorithm and for most things, like to have success on social media relies a lot on you having an emotional response to it. And the things that elicit the most emotional response are the things that get the most engagement. So it's really easy for somebody to put out content that says, if your spouse does XYZ, like essentially you shouldn't be with them, right? Like this is a non-starter, this is a non-negotiable. And it takes this one thing that they may or may not actually be doing, your partner, and says like, this is the deal breaker. And if you're putting all of your faith and trust and all of your life decisions on this person you really idolize, that's super dangerous to not have the critical thinking to sit back and say, maybe there's some truth. Maybe my partner does do this to some degree, but what else is going on in the relationship? What's
frequent is
in the
it?
relationship? How frequent
Am
is
I
it?
doing the same thing?
Is it causing a problem in the relationship? Right? There's so many other pieces to that I think because social media plays into our emotional responses so much, we really have to be mindful of how we're responding or reacting to the information we take in.
A little bit of a personal experience is that I was experiencing some of this. Like I left the LDS church. My husband is still a member, and I have a group of women who are in the same experience. And something was happening where I would be reading experiences they were having and feeling some sort of dictation of like my experience should be the same. And so it was actually causing a lot of issues where I was kind of fighting for things that what I've realized now is that it's really about what's working for us. Right. I attend church every Sunday. That doesn't work for everybody in the same situation, but we do that because it works for us. So yeah, like you can't just take that information and just like that puzzle piece may just not be the right fit for your puzzle. It may be for a different puzzle.
Yeah. Well, and again, like there might be truth in that thing that's being said, but I think the key always is, and I say this with my clients all the time too, is okay, so there's this XYZ behavior. Is it a problem? Is it working for you?
Yeah.
Because I think it's subjective. Like, are you okay with it? If you're okay with it, then like, who am I to tell you should do something different?
Yeah. If you two just don't talk about things,
Yeah.
I mean, I might have something to say about that, but if it's not actually causing problems for you, you're probably not coming to see me.
Right. Anyone can have opinions about it, but if it's working for you, right? Or I even think like say in our relationship episode or at some point we were talking in another episode about like should you go to bed at the same time, right? And you were like
Mhm.
this is good advice. I think it's really good. And since then I'm like my husband and I don't. We often go to bed at different times cuz he's tired and goes to bed earlier or I'm tired and I go to bed earlier, but like I could easily look at that and be like, something's wrong with our
Yeah.
relationship. And to be
Yeah.
honest, I've done that before in our relationship about different things that I'm like,
Yeah.
we should be doing something different. And he's like, why? He's like the steady, reasonable person. And I'm like, I don't know, because XYZ said, right? Like
Yeah.
I've done this very thing that we're talking about. And he's like, okay, that's great for
So
them. Like, is it a problem for us? And I'm like, I guess not. But like, okay, if I were to take that as like gospel truth, I would have gone and been like, hey, we need to go to bed at the same time. And if I insist on this like rigid rule, that's
because
going to
that's
cause,
what's supposed to be good for us.
yeah, that's going to cause more problems than for us to just like occasionally, and sometimes more frequently, depending on what we have going on in life, to just go to bed at a different time at night
Yeah.
because we just need something different for our sleep, right? And for our relationship,
And
that works okay.
that's just not the place that you guys find the connection.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
Yeah.
We're finding connection in other ways.
Right. Is it working for you? Is really the question I think it always
I
needs to
love,
come
love,
back
love
to.
that you're bringing that up.
Yeah.
It's such an important question to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we told you guys we had a lot to say about this.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about self-diagnosis. And let's start off by talking about how sometimes there can be certain quote unquote symptoms that fall into one diagnosis but also fall into another diagnosis. And if you're taking the bite-sized pieces that say this is what these symptoms are, you may have X, that might not be the case.
Mhm.
You might actually be struggling with something else. So I don't think I've heard of Venn diagrams as much as I have in the last year. I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of people are like talking about Venn diagrams.
Yeah.
So here we are again, like saying the same thing, like Venn diagrams are a thing. And
Mhm.
there can be so many crossovers.
Yeah. Yes. And that's in the business. This is what we call differential diagnosis. And that's one of the benefits of getting a formal diagnosis is you have a professional who's looking at your collection of symptoms and saying, hey, it kind of looks like OCD. It kind of looks like social anxiety. Let me look at the crossover with autism, right? Like we're looking at all the pieces because sometimes what people decide is social anxiety might actually be relationship OCD or vice versa, right? Because you're taking little pieces of something and it's helpful to start to put together the picture of like
Mhm.
what's going on. But if we lock on to like a self-diagnosis so hard, we might really be missing other pieces of that puzzle,
Yeah.
which then, right, the benefit of a diagnosis is to get help, is to have the right intervention or the right support. So if you're not giving yourself the accurate diagnosis, you might be missing some pieces of things that could be helpful for you.
And let's even just look outside of therapy itself. I had a client who I thought was like traumatized. Like they couldn't talk to me. They couldn't like, I was like, oh my gosh, like what happened to this person? They did the right thing. They went to a doctor. They got blood work done. They had vitamin deficiencies. And it made a huge difference when they started to get the vitamins they needed.
Mhm.
That person was able to come in and actually communicate with me. It was like almost a night and day difference. And so it may not even be a mental health issue that you're dealing with
Yeah.
because those symptoms can also cross over.
Yeah, which I think is a little plug for like holistic medicine would be really nice, right? If it was all like
Hey, everybody,
work
get together.
But yeah, coming back to, if you don't have the training to like formally give diagnosis, you might be missing some things.
Mhm.
And that's okay. Like that's not your job to know it.
Yeah.
Like I have limitations too. I don't diagnose autism. I know it well enough. Don't have any training to really assess for it. And so I send people off to my favorite psychologist to go get some testing done and then they come back and we work on it, right?
Yeah.
Like you just
Or even
know your limits.
switching to a different therapist that
Yeah.
is specialized in that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I think
So
that's super important.
and then the other thing that I wanted to say was that when we look as therapists, look at the DSM, the diagnostic manual, there is a certain amount of criteria for each of those. And if there are 9 criteria and you have to have at least 5 of those, which is a pretty common amount, but you only have 2 or 3 of those, you're not gonna be diagnosed with that. And so if you're only getting the context of those symptoms, you're again, like, labeling yourself with something that you might not actually be struggling with.
Yeah. Or
You
it
might just
really
be struggling with those types of symptoms, and let's just address those
Yeah.
instead of letting it plume into this
Yeah.
big thing.
It is sometimes overwhelming to look at the DSM and see how much crossover there is.
Mm.
You could take the same 3 symptoms and they could probably apply to 10 other diagnoses in the
Yeah.
DSM. There's just so much crossover. It's hard to know if like this influencer who's talking about this one thing,
Mhm,
ADHD is always what comes to mind because I feel like there's so much about ADHD
mhm,
that you just assume that like, oh, that's what I have. It
mhm.
could be other things, or it could just
Yeah.
be you being a human.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a diagnosis to explain that, like, sometimes functioning in life is hard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I think on self-diagnosis, I wanna say, like, maybe even more problematic is diagnosing other people, right? When you're taking
Yes.
information you're seeing from social media and then you're applying that
Yeah.
to someone else and saying like, "Oh my gosh, they are so BPD, like borderline personality disorder," or like, "Oh, they're such a narcissist," or like
Yeah.
you're
It's a big
putting these
thing.
labels on somebody else for whatever reason, and I think that can be really harmful
Yeah.
for relationships.
Yeah. Sometimes it might be true, but what I find, like, with borderline personality disorder in particular, when you go through the criteria, the majority of them is something that's happening internally for the
Mhm.
other person. And so you can't really ask, well, does that person have fear of abandonment? That's an internal process that you have zero
Yeah.
understanding about unless you ask the question and
Mm.
assess. Like, you're not really gonna be able to identify that for another person, and
Yeah.
so, like,
That's a super good point.
yeah,
Such a good point. I mean, I think that could be true of any
a lot
diagnosis,
of
but
things.
especially personality disorder and
Yeah,
BPD, like it is so subjective, right? And you might have the opinion that they have abandonment issues. You're explaining their behavior in one way, but that might not be the truth. That's
mhm.
just your perception of it.
Or they maybe deal with that one thing,
Yeah.
not all of them.
Pieces. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just very nuanced.
Yes. And I think, okay, maybe you have good intentions of trying to understand someone in your life. You're trying to understand your partner, you're trying to understand your kids. That's fine looking for extra information, but make sure you're not using it as a, oh, this is just who you are, right? Like this is
Yeah,
just your label. You're just being so ADHD. You're being so BPD, like
yeah.
whatever, as a kind of degrading or like condescending thing.
Not even just that, but just, like, to me, that sounds like so much avoidance.
Yeah.
I think that you have to decipher between how you're using this information. Are you using it intentionally or not?
Yeah.
Are you using it as a way to say, like, okay, whether this person struggles with this or not, I don't know, but how is that impacting me and how do I want to interact with it?
Yeah.
So, whether it's the case or not, maybe they do have a disorder or maybe they just have this characteristic that you really struggle with. Do I need to have some kind of boundaries around that? But to slap a label on somebody without really knowing. And I think we both know this, that I feel like narcissism is probably one of the biggest ones that people say, oh, they're just such a narcissist. The irony is that I've had several covert narcissists in my office that I haven't known
Mhm.
are narcissists until like years into therapy, right? Or until something really intense happens.
Yeah.
So you can't really always define that.
Yeah. I really like that you brought in like the intention. Like, what is your intention? And good intentions can still sometimes go wrong.
Right.
But I think looking at your intention is a really good way to like monitor or kind of check what you're using your social media for, what you're using the mental health content for,
Mhm.
because intention can make a huge difference. And I
Yeah.
think for me, that kind of touches into this point we were going to get to in a minute of using those labels to justify your behavior,
Mhm.
right? Well,
Or others.
I can't do XYZ because I have this diagnosis. Maybe that's true in some cases, but for a lot of people, the diagnosis becomes the excuse
Mhm.
or the thing that like kind of keeps them in that victim mode of like,
Mentality,
I'm
which
limited
is more
because of this
avoidance.
diagnosis
Lots of
versus
avoidance.
understanding it and really learning how to work with it and find the accommodations that you need and learning yourself and creating more self-awareness to improve your social connections and to
Mhm.
like be more aligned with what you value in life.
Yeah.
The intention
All
matters.
that's important. That intention is so important because otherwise I feel like without it, we're really letting life run us.
Yeah. Kind of
Um,
like you were saying about Instagram, like social media in
yeah.
our last episode, right?
Yeah.
Are you running it or is it running you?
Yeah. Sometimes we want to label people. There's two things. Sometimes we label people when really maybe our personalities clash. It's not really that they have a disorder, right? But that you clash with their personality. It just doesn't, you guys, it just doesn't fit. The second thing I wanted to say is that it's not just about justifying our own behavior, but I think I hear time and time again when somebody will complain, like, oh my gosh, this person really hurt me. This is what they did. And a family member in particular, family members will just say, well, that's just who they are.
Yeah.
It becomes very dismissive.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit different than what we're talking about, but that's what kind of comes to mind is
Yeah.
that we can not just justify our own behaviors, but we can justify what other people do.
Yeah.
Oh, they just have this thing.
Yeah. And that can be harmful. It can be helpful. It can be harmful.
The difference between being patient and justifying,
Enabling. Yeah.
enabling.
Yeah. And again, like with all these things, context matters. So we're speaking broad general terms. Always.
Large strokes.
Yeah.
Here. Well, let's get into maybe talking a little more about AI in particular.
Yeah. Let's do that. What do you want to say about it? Start us off, Kayla.
Well, it can be messy. I think there's been a lot of stories that have come out recently about the harm of this.
Mm-hmm.
AI tends to reflect more than it challenges. It will validate, empathize with you. Like I've challenged it at some points to be like, tell me why this is wrong. And even sometimes it will still come back and be like, no, you're not wrong.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It'll challenge me to some point, but there's still kind of like, the validation in where I'm at.
Yeah.
So
and even if it did challenge you, you'd have to be the kind of person who wants to be challenged. You'd have to have the awareness to say,
because you're teaching
I
it.
need to be challenged in this. I want to make sure, right? Not everyone has that mindset going into therapy, AI use. Like not everyone has that mindset of like, I want to be challenged, right?
They want to grow.
Yeah. Most people go into it thinking, I want to feel better.
I want to feel better. And same thing with therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to be validated. I want somebody, whether you have this thought or not, or if you recognize the thought or not, I want to go in them and have them tell me that I'm right.
Yeah.
Couples therapy is like this a lot.
I'm sure.
Is that, again, whether they recognize they want that or not, they come in. That's part of the conflict is like, this is how I see it. And I want my partner to see it the same way.
Totally.
So now we're going to go to this third party and you can tell us who's right and who's wrong. But AI is the same way.
Yeah. I'd be really curious because I haven't used AI a ton for, mental health needs. I'd be really curious if it really recognizes the difference between validating someone's emotion and validating like their behavior, right? Because I feel like I often have to separate that out in therapy of like, I am validating that it feels this big. It feels really hard. Also, can we hold some space for the fact that like maybe there are other perspectives, maybe there are other stories that you're telling yourself this one story. Can we hold some space for the fact that like that might not be the only story that's going on here? And that's a really important piece of helping people grow and create self-awareness and grow more capacity to feel, right? And to like
but also differentiate.
Yes.
Right? That my truth can be true and your truth can be true. Some people don't like that.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot more. That's a very simplistic way to put it.
Yeah.
But we can experience the same thing differently.
Yeah.
I think the best way people have described this is like, the blind men filling the elephant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They all describe the elephant in a certain way, but they're only getting one version of it. Or like if you were to draw 3 circles, but then you turn it, all of a sudden you've got one line. All of those things are true.
Yeah.
It just looks different from your side.
Yeah.
So again, unless we have sort of that view or understanding, that critical thinking, and that feels like a skill sometimes of being able to hold 2 truths at once.
It's totally a skill.
Then we might use AI in a way that just, again, reinforces and validates us, but doesn't ever challenge us to think outside of ourselves. Yeah. We end up being in a vacuum and we only know what we know. So I don't know. Have you ever heard of the Johari window?
I think you've told me about it.
Maybe we talked about it on here. I use it all the time And it just seems to make sense to people where I hope I'm saying Johari right, because I
No
said it wrong and my sister-in-law had to correct me one time. I think it's Johari. And so it's like a window pane and there's four. So you've got things that you know about you and that others know about you, and things that just you know about you that others don't know about you, things that other people know about you that you don't know about you, and then the unknown. And that one where it's just like what other people know about you that you don't know about you, that is the scary one, because somehow you have to contemplate the idea that there's something you don't know about yourself. And that's kind of scary. And that's the stuff that like you're coming to therapy for to learn. And again, with AI only knows as much as you know. So if you're not feeding that to them, feeding it to it, it can't tell you.
100%. I keep thinking of the term you used, and I can't remember which episode it was, but you talked about how we as therapists, we kind of gently corner our clients, right?
I don't think that's how I say it.
There's such a nuanced skill in that of reading people. How much can I push? What do I say? When do I say it? How are they taking this in? How do I gently corner them, right? Into seeing shimmy
and
next shimmy so much.
You're shimmying your clients into together. Something cool.
That takes so much attunement that a computer will never have. That takes such a human level of attunement that a computer won't have.
Elon Musk might disagree with you.
Well, I could have some words with him.
I don't know. I mean, it scares me, the idea that maybe that could potentially happen. I don't know if, like, I argue it too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that, because it feels like an essence. Can you give, I mean, to me, that's more of like this idea of a soul.
Yeah. I do this all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's like a thing.
Like moist?
There's just like in
the air.
There's just a quality about it, you know?
Like humidity.
Yeah. My hands always do this.
Yeah, that's what I do too. It's like you can't feel it and you can't describe it. It's this.
Yeah, and my clients are like, no, I know what you're saying. Yeah, this.
But I don't know if a robot will ever be able to touch that.
Yeah.
Because that's like, it's so hard to explain.
Yeah. There's no word.
I'm
sorry, if you're listening and not watching, we're just rubbing our fingers together.
I feel like I'm quacking with my hands.
Okay, so I will back up and say maybe not never, but as of right now, ChatGPT does not have that capability.
That's a good point to say right now. That's not a capability it has.
I personally doubt that it ever will, but what I know for sure is that it doesn't right now.
We'll come back in 20 years.
We'll still be podcasting in 20 years.
Just be like, what is today?
Do it. Come back in 20 years and tell us how you feel. Anyway, did you want to say more about the validation aspect that it reflects more than a challenge?
I think we've talked about it.
We've
done it.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about hallucinating.
Yeah, talk about that.
Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it, yes. But I don't feel like I know it well enough to maybe introduce it.
I probably don't either, honestly. I don't. I just know the story that I told you.
Yeah, tell the story.
Well, was that it? I get mixed up because there's been a few stories that I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. This one in particular, I think it had actually told the therapist that it was like, it could hallucinate. But it had somehow, the therapist had ended up being given this statistic from ChatGPT, and they were like, what? That seems like a really sort of like too good to be true thing. And so it was like, wow, that's really cool. Like, can you give me some sources that talk about that statistic? And it came back and was just like, oh, that's not a real statistic. It just sounds good. And there's actually nothing that backs it up. So, the therapist continued this conversation and kind of questioned it. But I think it was in this one that it literally used the word hallucinating. And there's something that can happen with AI. Again, I don't know if I can really accurately describe this. It almost sounds like the story that I'm giving doesn't like refer to hallucinating. But when I've heard it, it doesn't feel like the right word, but that's the word that's being used.
Yeah.
So I would say that if I were to kind of like put a bow on that, it's like it can make up what it wants and give it to you rather than it actually like seeking reputable sources that back it up.
Yeah. And I might rephrase that to say like it will make stuff up based on what you want, not make
That's
stuff
a very
up
good
that
point.
it wants. It makes stuff up that you want. It will tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
It will over-validate and it will over-inflate like the things that you want to hear, which can be really helpful, but can be super dangerous, right? I don't know the specifics of any one story, but I've heard multiple stories of people who, you know, are experiencing like active delusions or their own hallucinations, or they're really, really mentally unwell or suicidal, and they've used ChatGPT to try to help them through it. And what actually does is it escalates those issues and those symptoms. And there have been stories of people who actually end up dying by
Yeah,
suicide because of
there have been.
the influence that they've had from AI.
And actually I think on one of the stories, they actually provided ideas
Yeah.
and like resources to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. And I don't know enough of the details to know if that person was asking for that and saying like I want, but
Right.
still, right? Like if you're with a therapist and saying I don't want to be alive and I'm thinking through the ways that I might end my life, your therapist is not going to be like, yeah, no, that one wouldn't work. You should try this. Why don't you look at these options? A therapist is going to take a very different approach to say, let's talk about that, right? How do we keep you safe?
Yeah.
Let's look at other options for working through this issue. That I again,
Yeah.
without knowing the details of what was really prompted into AI, it's hard to say for sure if that was the intention that that person, those people were
Had.
using AI for. Were they looking for help, or were they really looking for help in carrying out their plan? But still, because AI won't catch those kinds of things,
The
it's
attunement.
really dangerous. It can't, I don't think it should ever be used as a replacement for therapy. I think it can be helpful as a supplement.
Yeah. Working through things, I've done it myself. Late at night, feeling really emotional about something, felt validated, but even in that validation, having to check and just say, okay, like
Uh,
this is AI,
Yeah.
and I feel kind of better about this, but also I don't have all the pieces here,
Yeah.
right? Like, especially if you're trying to work through like relational issues. I mean, as a therapist, I still have to take what somebody is saying with a grain of salt if I don't have the other person in the room.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with AI.
Mm.
AI is only getting one side of the story.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Again, I think you said this last time. There's more danger or potential for harm with these things than there is benefit in
yeah.
in the mental health space, I guess.
I mean, at least that's my take on it.
Yeah.
35% good,
I love the number. And
65.
can you give me a source for that number?
That's my number. I am the
It was
source.
just this. It was just something you could sense, right? You could
Yes,
just feel it.
that's it. Just like this is what the number feels like.
I love it.
So in reference to that, what you just said is that one thing that you can do is ask ChatGPT or any of these AI systems to cite reputable sources when you're asking them some of these questions.
Yeah.
Give me the research articles, give me links to where I can read
Yeah.
the research on this.
Yeah.
It's an easy thing to throw in there.
I think one way, again, this came from a colleague, a mentor. Her name's Karina Hammer. She runs the Clinical Yoga Institute. She's talked to, people that she interacts with about using AI, encouraging your clients to say, like, hey, if you're going to use AI, ask it, how can I use this in therapy? Right? If you're having a conversation with ChatGPT, what can I take back to my therapist that I've talked to you about, right? Or like, what should I ask my therapist? And figure out ways to involve your AI use in therapy, but also kind of almost like letting ChatGPT know, like, I have a therapist. Help me organize my thoughts to take to therapy, right?
Yeah.
Use it again as a tool and as a supplement,
really like
not a
that.
replacement. Yeah. I thought it was a great idea.
Because I really struggle with trying to organize my thoughts sometimes. And I think a lot of clients do,
Yeah.
especially when they feel like they have so much to talk about.
Yeah.
And there's all these experiences they've had, but they don't know how to like label them. I've got one of those like pictures in my office where it's like, like a jumbled thoughts, and then I'm helping them like organize it. And I feel like ChatGPT can do some of that.
For sure.
And then we can have a conversation about it.
Yeah. In some ways that can be helpful because therapy never feels long enough. When I go to therapy, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I fit in all the things I want to in 50 minutes? I could see that being beneficial to like, okay, organize my thoughts here and help me pinpoint what I actually really want to work on today. And that helps like for me, I like love for therapy to feel efficient, which is probably its own thing, right?
I mean,
As my therapist would say, but I want therapy to feel like I'm getting to the meat, right?
crux of it.
Getting all that out through ChatGPT could help me get to therapy and be like, this is what I want to like really poke into today. I could see that.
I like
being really
that. I see that.
Yeah.
Too bad we didn't talk about that in our last episode.
Yeah.
But here we are.
But here we are.
That's fine.
This is how to use it in a good way, right? In a way that supports what you're getting after. Anything else you want to say about AI?
Yeah, I want to talk about how um, we're saying that there's a lack of attunement, there is a lack of accountability for us, and there's also a lack of repair.
Yeah.
And that last one, repair, I feel like it really refers to whether you want to use repair or healing, or like what I'm trying to get into is this idea of relational healing. That so much of what a therapist provides is a healthy relationship. I know it doesn't always feel, perhaps for some people, genuine, because you're coming to somebody and paying them to have this like relationship with you, which makes sense. But what's happening and what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to model healthy boundaries. We're supposed to model a healthy relationship that, like, if you give me feedback, I can handle that, and you can practice giving feedback to me, and we can talk about that and work through it in a really healthy way.
Mhm.
I mean, if you have a therapist that can't do that, probably find somebody
Mhm.
else. But that's what, like, part of what we're doing is we're modeling and helping you have kind of a corrective experience
Yeah.
with a healthy person, with a healthy relationship. And you cannot do that with a robot.
Mm.
Again, there's that nuance and that attunement.
Yeah.
And it's not relational.
Yeah.
It's not relational in the slightest.
Yeah. It stays in a very cognitive, intellectual space, right? But there's so much that happens in a relationship that's on a nervous system level that's not
Yes.
tangible. It's this.
Here's the thing. It's not
It's
tangible.
not tangible, and you can't recreate it through a screen.
Yeah.
Telehealth is a little bit tricky.
Okay, that's different. That's different. You're talking to somebody through a
Okay. I
thing.
know when I said screen, I'm like, that's not true. But
That's not what you're
with a
referring to.
computer,
With a
right?
computer.
It doesn't have a nervous system to regulate with you. It can't pick up on like, hey, I think a big benefit of being in therapy, and I think this is true of like taking in information from social media or trying to do therapy with AI, is that like when I'm providing feedback or I'm providing some education to my clients, I am paying attention to how they're responding to what I'm saying so that I can titrate how much information I'm giving. And then I can say, how is that settling for you? It seems like something's happening for
Yeah.
you. Like, how are you able to digest and process what's being said? Or are you getting oversaturated and overwhelmed and shutting down?
Well, so much of that has to do with body language.
Yeah.
And literally seeing a person. You don't get that
Yeah.
with AI.
Yeah. That's a huge piece of the relational healing that happens, is for a client to sit there and say, somebody's paying attention to how their behavior is affecting me, when so many of our clients have not had that experience or have had very few experiences like that. That I think is that like deeper level of like magic that's happening in session that's not said, but it's happening.
It's my little
And-
finger wands.
And AI can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this relational aspect of healing is really, really critical.
Yeah.
It and you might want to put that in the context of couples therapy, but it's not just couples therapy.
Mm.
If I can't, I mean, I generally am like, do you want to bring your partner in? Because that's so great. If that's not the case, then I am that person. I am the relationship. This is where they learn to heal and start to feel safe, that there is a person, that it is possible. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I'll get off my
that.
soapbox on
That's
that
okay.
one.
That's okay. We have a lot to say about relationship and relational healing, but
Here we go.
well, here we
Yeah,
go.
because here's the self-help stuff that you said you had so much to talk about.
I do.
You have, I think, a lot more to talk about here than I do.
I'm really passionate about this.
Maybe it'll come out when we start talking about it.
Probably. I think kind of like to bring this full circle, whether you're using AI or it's social media or you're seeing a life coach or you're working with a therapist or you're doing a mentorship program or whatever it is, there will always be people in those spaces looking to exploit and take advantage of vulnerable people. And I think especially in the self-help world, self-development, people are inherently vulnerable because they're going into it saying, I have a problem, I have an issue in myself that I want help with, right?
Mhm.
There's an inherent power dynamic that exists in therapy, exists in coaching. When you're seeking out a service or a professional, you're going in to some degree the vulnerable party in that situation.
Yeah.
And saying, I want your help. I want your expertise, your knowledge to help me.
I never thought about it like that.
Mm.
Like, I've thought about it like
Mhm.
that, but not you've said that kind of different, where I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like, that's what we talk about in some of this power dynamic." I guess I always thought about it as like, well, you're the client and I'm the professional, right? But I like to talk about how even giving people feedback is a really vulnerable thing for people to do. And so I look at vulnerability different, but that kind of says that to me too. It's just like, yeah, people are already putting themselves in a vulnerable position to say, I need help. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I want your help. So because people are people and humans are humans, there will always be people looking to exploit that
Mhm.
and take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And I think the self-help world has a lot of people who are trying to be helpful and have a lot of integrity and have good intentions. I think there's also people who see the opportunity to make a shit ton of money because, like you said
Yeah.
earlier, right? Like it costs money to do mentorship programs. It costs money to do life coaching. It costs money to do therapy, right? And I'm not trying to make this a like self-help world versus therapy. I think it
Yeah.
applies across the board that when you're engaging and wanting self-development is a really great thing, but when you're engaging in anything in that arena, I think it's really important for people to be intentional about how much power energetically, emotionally, how much power they're giving this other person, right?
Yeah.
When they say something, are you taking it in as like, okay, my therapist said this, and so it has to be true, right? Or my life coach told me this, and so now that's another rule added to my rule book of life. Or is it my life coach or my therapist or this mentor said this thing, and like you said, like I'm holding that and trying to decide like how much of that resonates, how much of it doesn't. Do I want to take any of that in or do I not? Does it
Yeah.
apply to me or does it not?
Well, and then maybe even just time stamped too, that maybe right now we take that in and we use it, but maybe later we don't, right? Or the other way around.
I think a lot of my issue, and this is heavily, I will give credit to my husband, this is heavily influenced by his opinions. You know, when we first were like getting together and dating, and I was kind of like offended initially by some of his opinions on self help because I felt like it applied to therapists and it does apply to
Yeah.
therapists. But so many self help programs require your money and they require you to follow their programs specifically. A lot of self help books start off like, here's the problem. Most like in some ways, they can convince you that you have a problem, make it a problem,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
say, but I have the solution and it costs $500, right? Here's the solution that only I have. I have this like secret answer that you can pay me for. And they all kind of follow the same pattern. I'll say like I don't really think that every person doing a self-help program or book has that intention, but inherently it's there. And people are trying to make money and good for them, and they're maybe trying to be helpful to the world and good for them. I don't think it's a black and white thing. I think as consumers, we have to be mindful of, am I constantly chasing this like next answer that's going to fix me?
Yeah.
And am I chasing that answer from other people who know more than me or who are more expert than me
Mhm.
without really considering like, how am I integrating this? How am I applying this? Do I really need that?
Does it feel good?
Maybe I'm okay as I am, right? I think that it inherently exploits this like, I'm not good enough. I'm not enough as I
That,
am. And
that
I
right
need
there.
someone else to fix me and I'm going to pay them money to do it. And that's where I have such a problem
Yeah.
with self-help anything.
I have not thought about it like that. This idea that, I mean, so many people carry this negative belief of I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And to put it in that context of I'm going to fix this thing that's not good enough. I'm going to do it in whatever ways that I'm being told,
Mhm.
and then that'll make me good enough. That's such a problem because the only place that we can fix that belief is within ourselves. That when we actually start to be kind to ourselves and we can recognize the places that we are good, that we are just okay as we are,
Mhm.
that's the only way to really shift that belief. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's exploited. I
Yeah.
had never thought of it like that.
Yeah. I do enjoy self-development books. I tend to really enjoy books and content put out by other therapists and other like mental health professionals. Not that I've never read something by
Mm.
anyone else, but I would just say like be really intentional and mindful about what does this person have to gain from you consuming their content or buying into their program? Because not all of it's bad. There have been some things that I personally have done that are really helpful. What do they have to gain? And is this perpetuating my like fix it? I have to fix myself mentality, or is this helping me come to greater self-acceptance? Is this helping me learn more self-compassion? Right? Like,
Are we feeling calmer, or are we just feeling more anxious?
yeah. Are you feeling more and more like something's wrong with you? Or are you feeling like I'm feeling more grounded in myself and feeling like I'm understanding myself better? And there's so much nuance to that because there's so many more things to say about that and the way that that can be influenced and manipulated in a lot of ways too.
But I think what you're really kind of getting at, that so much of what we're talking about here today is about critical thinking.
Yeah.
We're not outsourcing our intuition. We're not giving up our power
Hmm.
or our agency in this, but we're actually just critically thinking. I don't know. I feel like this is a skill that
Yeah.
so many people struggle with
Yeah.
because I think there's something easy about being told what to believe. And it's easy to be told what to think. And we can just kind of go along with that. Ironically, we kind of become robotic.
Yeah. Good one.
Yeah. So, becoming coming into a place where you start to like be in charge of your life. If you do read something, I mean, we've said this already. If you do read something, if you are taking in some information, trying to figure out where to put it, there's nothing wrong with taking it to another person, taking it to your therapist, taking it to somebody who you trust and who's earned the right to experience your vulnerability and talk to them about it rather than, again, staying in this vacuum of how you're taking it in. Like, are there other perspectives? Does this actually fit for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you have to really be mindful of, does this resonate at like my heart level, or do I just like how this sounds? Right.
Mhm.
We can take in information and understand it cognitively, or it sounds good cognitively based on what we think we're supposed to be doing or supposed to be thinking.
Yeah.
But does it actually resonate like on a heart, nervous system, subconscious, right? Like whatever essence,
I was going to do it too. The essence.
does it actually resonate for you personally? And if that, yeah, like if that is hard for you to tell, or if you're not feeling really confident in your ability to know yourself, then do take it to someone that you trust, whether that's therapy or a partner or a close friend or whoever that is that you trust, to help kind of bounce those ideas off of and see like,
Mhm.
does this apply to me? Right? Help me see how this fits in my life.
Yeah. What comes to mind is like, is this something that brings some sense of calm and peace, or does it not? And on some level, that's hard to say because when we're challenging ourselves, it's not peaceful, it's
Yeah.
not calm.
Yeah.
And again, there's kind of nuance in that of like, okay, it can be challenging, but a lot of times I often ask my clients this because, especially in couples therapy, I'll ask the question after a partner shares something, I'll go to the other partner and say, okay, well, what's that like for you to hear that? Right. Or I'll be like, what's that like to share it? And oftentimes, like almost immediately, the negative thing comes out of like, it's really scary, or that's really hard to hear. And I feel, these things about it. And I'll validate that, but then I'll back up and say, was there anything positive about it when you shared or when you heard what they had to say?
Hmm.
And almost always there is something positive. There is something that like is just like, well, yeah, I actually feel more relaxed. I feel some relief, even though the immediate response is that's scary. It's scary to say or it's scary to hear. So what I'm getting at is that when you're intaking some of this information, if it does feel not good, if it does feel challenging, maybe you ask yourself a similar question of like, is there something positive that you do feel? Do you feel something in your body happen where you feel a little more relaxed? You feel a little more of peace? You experience a little more clarity, even though it feels hard?
Yeah.
I almost feel like that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're saying that because I think I use the word like, does that resonate, right? But I think this kind of plays into this like tendency that we have as humans to chase feeling good and
Mhm.
chase happiness, but that doesn't always lead us where we
Right.
want to go, right? There are multiple times with my clients where I'm like, how is that landing for you? And they're like, well, it feels terrible, actually. I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, but and what else?
And what else?
And then it's like, well, it feels terrible, but also like feels true, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes truth hits hard. Sometimes the things that we need to see in ourselves or hear feels terrible, but it also feels true. And so it doesn't always feel good. And I think that could be another thing that plays into the self-help world, is that it plays into feeling good, right? If it feels good and if it sounds good, then it must be good.
This is what you have to do to feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes what is truth and what resonates, or where we actually need to do some personal work, feels really shitty and really scary.
It's really, really challenging.
And having someone gently corner you
Yeah.
into that is
Yeah.
really where,
What you need.
really where growth happens.
Yeah.
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 So I think the self-help world has a lot of benefit. I think there are things to be aware of.
I mean, we're a part of it.
100%. Yes. And that's why endlessly I will always give my clients the option, like, I would love your feedback. If there's something I'm saying that's not settling or resonating, push back. Tell me that you don't like that, and we'll explore that. I have no intention of being the expert in your life. I have no intention of telling you what to do or how to live your life. That doesn't feel good for me either.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't want to get into a space where we're just trying to convince our clients.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably get enough of that from the other people in your life. If I do go in that direction, I usually say it. I know that this is just trying to convince you. And I say it anyway. And then I'm like, yeah, it didn't hit, did it?
I do sometimes say, I can feel myself really trying to convince you of this, but I recognize that's not going to help. So let's just like reset here.
Start over.
Let me reset myself, because I'm getting emotionally invested here.
Yeah.
It is a hard job. Anyway,
Wow.
it was a lot. I had a lot to say.
I feel
I
like
should probably have more, but we don't have time.
I feel like you've hit all the stuff at least that we wanted to cover. To kind of wrap up, I like this and I don't. Awareness doesn't equate healing. Awareness is really, 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 really important.
Yeah.
It's like the part that I feel like takes the longest for me in therapy, but that's not the end. There's still more to be done, or there's something in tandem, right? Like, I don't know if it was in the last episode or if we said it here, but that there are interventions that happen inside of therapy that you can't get elsewhere. And then, so insight without relationship just can create more dysregulation.
Yeah. Yeah. Insight is a really important part of it, but there also has to be embodiment, right? There has to be, I always think in terms of like head to heart, right? Insight is cognitive. Awareness can be cognitive. It can be both, right? But until that also settles and you get your mind and your body on the same page, your nervous system and your cognition together, then the change isn't lasting, right? There's still more depth that needs to happen beyond awareness or insight. So that is a huge part of healing.
Here's kind of a more simplistic way of talking about it. When you're talking about your head and your body, it's like we're saying your left brain and your right brain want to be communicating. And if they're not, then there's problem. And that's what I feel like you're referring to.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the way that you're talking about it. This is just another way to say that.
I like it.
That, you can't just allow your right survival brain to take over everything, but you also don't want your left brain to take over and just analyze and intellectualize everything.
Yes.
Those two things go together. And, to our listeners, to maybe illustrate this, is there's probably things that you know to be true, but you don't believe it.
Yes.
Right? Like the easiest one I have is that you know that you are probably intelligent or smart or attractive, but you don't actually believe that. Like if somebody compliments you and says, you look so nice or you're so smart, you might feel this thing of like, well, that's not true. They're not being honest about that. That's really the difference between what I know versus what I believe in my body. And we want those to help each other, because integrating those two means that I can take what I know and those positive things that I know about myself and integrate them into my body, or my body also knows them.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to add, like, taking from like what I know to what I believe also translates to like what I do.
Yes.
Right? Once you know it here and you believe it, then your behavior changes too, right? Getting those both in alignment, then you start to see the change in your everyday behaviors and interactions.
You won't change otherwise, because one or the other has taken over.
Yeah.
And especially that survival part of your brain, you'll practice old patterns, you'll do things that you don't mean to do. It will feel like you're out of control. That's why you need your left brain to say, hey, like chill out, but you also don't want your intellectual brain to say, hey, let's minimize this. So you need both.
Yeah.
You need both of
I
these.
like the left-right brain analogy too. It's nice to have other language, and I think it's always good to give a different metaphor for our listeners.
But I think what you were really getting at is that, again, we're talking about sort of this relational experience that you just can't get with TikTok or AI.
Yeah. In the end, I think kind of what we want to summarize is that like the online tools, right? AI, TikTok, social media, all of that can be really helpful. Let it springboard you into something more relationship focused, whether that's therapy or talking about it with your close people. Let it be a part of your journey and your healing and your self-development, but don't let it be the end all be all.
It's a tool in your tool belt. It's not you, right? It's not a solution. It's a tool. So let's take it out and use it appropriate, right? Like you don't want to use a screwdriver as a hammer.
You can, but
you could
really
try.
Ineffective.
Maybe if you use the butt end of it.
In the end too, I kind of feel like not even just like take it to therapy, because I still don't want to make it seem like therapy is the answer either, right? You are the answer. You have all the answers. You have everything you need. Sometimes we just need a little help to find it and access it, but it's you. If it doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't matter who it's coming from.
It's still that critical thinking thing, right? Like, and recognizing that you don't just have to rely on yourself to figure it out. So the answer's in you. It's about how do we get it out? Is that because you take in some of this stuff and you consider it all? You go to another person that helps you figure that out and bring it out. And that's because what we've been taught as therapists is that, like what you're saying is, I'm not the expert of your life. What we're kind of saying is, I don't know what's happening inside of you. So if you can share that with me, we can explore it together and really figure out how to, I'm watching you put a puzzle together and I'm saying, hey, have you tried that corner? Have you tried that spot? Have you tried that piece? This is what it's starting to look like. Do you see that? You're putting it together.
I love that.
We're just here to hold your hand.
I love that.
And I think that's anything else.
Yeah.
It's like, if you use it that way, that's going to benefit you.
That's lovely.
I like puzzles.
I like puzzles. That is a really good point to end, I think. I hope we made our point.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
And if not, I guess you'll let us know.
Yeah, please.
Or not.
Give us some feedback.
Love feedback.
Feel free to push back. No, that is all I think we have today. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye. Thanks for listening to No Couch Required. We'd love to keep the conversation going with you. Connect with us on Instagram at No Couch Required Pod and let us know your thoughts. If you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, send them our way. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And consider leaving us a review. It really helps others find the show. We'll see you at our next episode.